guys, so today we have a special guest, Dmitry Buterin, who is the father of the genius creator of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin. Ethereum is the second largest cryptocurrency and as well the most used blockchain. And Dmitry Buterin is as well a serial tech entrepreneur, and he's quite a big supporter of Ukraine. He's a big contributor to Ukraine DAO and as well director at gate.org. Which supports Ukrainian families. Great to have you here, Dima.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So can you tell us about your entrepreneurial journey and how did you discover Bitcoin? Which year was it?
Yeah, I kind of fell into entrepreneurship because I grew up in the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union was the perfect example of what happens when we don't have entrepreneurship, right? Everything was supposed to be centralized and everything was supposed to be decided by some smart, good people on top, and everything was a total mess. And it's kind of interesting to see Russia is now going back to the same mess. But anyway, so I studied computer science and I had a couple of jobs early on related to that as a software engineer and a computer systems consultant, but then with a couple of my friends in, I think it was 97 when we started our first business. And then I had a few more companies that built over the years. They were all in computer technology. So yeah, that's kind of the brief summary. And as for Bitcoin, you know, always been very curious, always have a very curious mind, learning about different things, and came across Bitcoin. I think it was on a podcast about computer security or something, and it sounded like a really fascinating idea, money which is not managed by some kind of central authority. So kind of came across that and mentioned that to Vitalik, as I always try to share cool and interesting things with him. So that's how it unfolded.
So what was how old was Vitalik at the time, and like did he get the idea of Bitcoin the same as you, or did you have different views on it?
Frankly, I don't even remember. Like he maybe was 15 or 16. I'm thinking 15. And of course, he had a different perspective of things, right? We all each live in our own universe with our different views about everything.
And did you invest at that time into Bitcoin, or you just researched
Not
it
really.
more?
I was too busy raising kids and building businesses, so I didn't really do that.
So have you ever been really into crypto industry, or were you just building traditional businesses and like supporting crypto in the way like charity or supporting Vitalik?
Well, once Vitalik started getting involved, it's, you know, obviously now I had personal interests, so it became much more interesting to me. And he was a writer and then senior editor of Bitcoin magazine for a couple of years. So I read most of their issues, and he did a lot of writing and editing in each issue. And I still have those magazines at my place. So learned a lot from those articles and from that magazine. One of it was actual print publication, physical magazine, right? Mm-hmm. Which was unusual by itself back then. You know, everything was going online. And ever since then, you know, the Ethereum was created and Vitalik showed me the white paper. And ever since then, I've been kind of tracking that. And in terms of businesses, I co-founded a business called Blog Geeks, which is in the area of education around blockchain, but I was never involved in a major role there. And the business itself kind of has not been very successful anyway. So I have basically pure referral involvement in blockchain from a practical standpoint, but been following that closely for the last, let's call it 10 years.
Mm-hmm. It's actually quite fascinating that you learned from your son, from Vitalik, about crypto. Like first you introduced him, but then like he showed you the industry in much bigger way.
Yeah, I mean, that was always his talent early on, is that he was able to take something very complicated, but then explain it in a pretty simple way, right? And that, I think, is one of their important foundations and the creation of Ethereum, right? Because even nowadays, when I listen to a lot of people talk about proof of work, proof of stake, Bitcoin, Ethereum, there's a lot of, people use a lot of complex words and they use very complex explanations. But that expression, when you cannot see forest for the trees, you see the trees, but you don't see the forest. And there's a lot of that. And he had a talent. He has a talent of explaining very complex things in a really simple way. And that he still does that. A book has just came out, Proof of Stake, a compilation of his writings on that.
So now actually it's quite the biggest event. Everybody is awaiting Ethereum Merge. What are your expectations from it?
I don't have any expectations from it, but it's quite exciting because it was in the white paper of Ethereum, it was stated that Ethereum will switch to proof of stake because it was already intuitively guessed, or it was not whatever. It was clear to Vitalik even back then when we came up with the idea of Ethereum. I think it was 2013, that proof of stake is the future because it is a more efficient way to run blockchains. But to make that practical took a long time. A lot of really smart people doing a lot of thinking and research, a lot of development, a lot of dead ends, a lot of disappointments, a lot of stuff had to happen. And so it's very big and exciting milestone just from the sense of their achievement. And I know when I saw Vitalik a few weeks ago and we spoke about this, he was very excited about this coming to fruition. So that's kind of from, if you will, the emotional standpoint. Then I'm also very excited about the fact that this will bring down the energy consumption of Ethereum network by hundreds of times, right? And this is a big deal because, again, you mentioned, support of Ukraine, right? Like when we look at how in this invasion of Ukraine by Russia is now using energy to manipulate Europe and other regions. So energy is obviously a very important factor in human affairs, and blockchains have become major consumers of energy, right? And so Bitcoin is the biggest, obviously, and humongous consumer of energy for that, and Ethereum and the second after that. So it's quite awesome that Ethereum will be able to achieve actually better security than it has now, but with 100 times less consumption of energy. So that's a big deal. And finally, for people who are interested in Ethereum as a currency, their Ether, this change will be also a big deal because it further reduces their inflation of Ether coins and actually makes it deflationary. And the issuance of Ethereum is already lower than Bitcoin's, but it will become even lower, and actually depending on the usage, will probably be flat or deflationary. So that is a big deal too.
And do you have any concerns which may come with the transition of Ethereum to proof of stake?
It's a very big undertaking. So there's a lot of complexity, right? And also what I like and appreciate about Ethereum compared to many other technical systems, right? It's more of an ecosystem with so many different, so the number of different clients or implementations of Ethereum protocol, there are many different teams and they develop their different competing implementations of Ethereum, and they have to be interoperable and all of that. And again, the network is working and nobody can stop that, switch it off, and then upgrade it. So instead, it's like the whole upgrade is designed to be just a smooth transition from the current proof of work algorithm, one huge piece of their system will be swapped out for proof of stake. And it's really hard to do. So there are definitely lots of risks, but I am quite appreciative of the way that's been approached, and it has not been rushed, even though that's been a big goal for a long, long time. And for the last year and a half, right, there was a lot of testing done on that, and many cycles of testing. Many problems were found, many problems were fixed. And again, as a guy who spent my life in computer systems, doesn't mean that there will not be any problems. Like, who the hell knows? It's impossible to predict. But I trust that Ethereum community, if there are any problems, that they will be able to figure them out. So yeah, I don't really have concerns, but it is a big undertaking for sure.
And as well, you were quite focused on different cybersecurity issues and privacy. What is your opinion about different ZK rollups? We have seen that many projects, layer 2s, reveal their ZK rollups like Polygon, as well. We have Stackware, ZK and some other projects. What do you think about them?
I mean, that's a future, right? Because if you look at the whole zero knowledge area of research, I remember I learned about it first again, probably less than 10 years ago, and it was all very theoretical and it was very complex, very slow. But the amount of research that happened in this whole space is astounding, and not just research, but practical applications of that. And for me, it's really clear that this is the future of how blockchains will be operating in the future, because I think that privacy is a foundational, essential need of human beings that has to be addressed in this space.
Yeah, and as well, can you tell more about childhood of Vitalik, and what was your approach to bring up him, to bring up children? You have as well now some younger children, two young daughters. Can you tell more about this?
Sure. I mean, what I have to say is that there are no recipes. You know, you become a parent, and it's a big deal. You now are responsible for this tiny human being, which requires so much attention and care and everything, and your life changes forever. And each child is unique, right? So, and then as it interacts with its parents, then the parents are doing their best based on what they have learned, what they've been taught, right? The books they read and all that kind of stuff, right? And I was no exception, right? So it's not like I have some good, perfect recipe. Like, I was another human being interacting with another totally unique situation, and as every parent has. I would say that personally for me, one important aspect of we parents, we're most of the time we're scared about children, and we want to find some perfect way for them to be safe and happy and this and that. So it's really important, I think, to start with their appreciation of the fact that sometimes they will be happy, sometimes they will be unhappy, like each and every human. That's always the case, and they will be successful in some ways and successful in other ways. They will struggle, they will cry, and they will be sick sometimes and stuff like that. And also for me, you know, again, growing up in the Soviet Union, you fundamentally in the Soviet Empire, in Russia specifically, the big deal is one important aspect of what most humans are programmed is that you don't matter at all. The state knows better, and it will decide for you everything, right? And then it decides how to teach you in school, where you will work, and so on. So your desires, your needs, whatever, are not important. The state is important. So, and a lot of people then they take that programming and that becomes their reality. And that's, again, clearly, this is how the situation is unfolding with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But then some people don't quite take that, and I ended up being a rebel, if you will, and really then when I learned about their anarchism and such, and again, most people totally misunderstand what anarchism is. Anarchism is really about non-violence, not initiation of violence, where people cooperate with each other basically through dialogue, right? So for me, that freedom, the opposite of violence, if you will, peacefulness, they were quite essential. So, and my interaction with my children, that also, I think, affected, that was a big factor in everything, right? So, and Vitalik was obviously a really smart child from the very outset, genius in math and all kinds of sciences. So again, when we talk to our children and then the child says, oh, why is this? You have an answer. Then they say, why is this? You continue this. And eventually you hit a wall because you cannot explain this. This is just something that's been programmed into you. And you just know, oh, this is right. And then you tell them, this is right. But again, children, as they learn, then they argue, but no, I want it different. I think that candy is whatever, good for me. I want unlimited candy and stuff like that, right? And again, then many parents, they really triggered when their authority is questioned and they just trying to impose, their views on their children. So my hope is that in my own experience bringing up Vitalik, there was less of that. Like I always kind of try to continue that dialogue and I can give him my ideas and opinions. And again, definitely I would keep him safe, but then end of the day, as much as it's possible. But then end of the day, it's really important for us to just help our children to make their own decisions, to learn to do that as soon as possible and be independent and know what they want, what is their truth, and move forward with that.
And did Vitalik show early interest in technologies, in coding? At which age did he start coding? Did you teach him to code, or how?
Yeah, I mean, early on, he with kids who have high intellectual capabilities, he learned to read very early on, and then he learned math early on and all kinds of stuff. And so when he was 6 years old, he could recite 100 digits of the number pi, for example, right? Because he really loved numbers and playing with them. And by the time he was, 9, he could easily multiply double-digit numbers and stuff like that in his head. And then the area closely related to that is computer science, right? And that's something that I studied and that I've been fascinated with all of my life. So then I tried to share that with him and he got quite interested. And I think that maybe I really don't have an exact recollection, but I'm thinking maybe when he was around 12, then probably earlier than that, I taught him a little bit of Visual Basic that could be run from Microsoft Office, and then a bit later on, helped him to learn C. And then also we sent him to this all kinds of local schools and additional places in addition to the regular school where he would learn programming and math and stuff like that.
And did Vitalik have any dream job when he was a child, or usually parents have an idea who their children should become in future? Did you want to?
No, and I never had that myself, and I don't recall Vitalik ever having this kind of an idea for what his dream job is. So no, not really.
And it's known that Vitalik, the idea of creation of Ethereum started that Vitalik was just playing games. So can you tell more about this and which video games did he play in childhood?
I mean, it's a bit of a urban legend, but I mean, it probably was one of the factors. And he didn't play that many games, but one game that he played for quite a bit was World of Warcraft, and I think he stopped eventually when a girl at school that he liked told him that it's stupid to play computer games. So I think that he kind of reduced his game playing after that.
That's funny. And as well, like, can you tell as well some more facts about upbringing Vitalik? Was like, what books did he read? What books did he like?
Books about math and science and physics and the world, you know, those kind of books he really enjoyed. And then as he got older, then he dove more and more into math and science books, kind of deep math, like, you know, here's the differential analysis, here's this and that, and all kinds of physics. And then eventually cryptography, which is heavily based on math. And yeah, like all of the books in our house, and we had quite a few, you know, he was curious about, and he tried reading them, and some he liked less.
And as well, like, what type of person was Vitalik in childhood? Was he sociable or not really much sociable?
No, not really. I mean, for people who are smart, quite often it's harder to, like, we end up developing using our brains a lot, but then kind of like we're less, let's call it, our emotional intelligence is less developed, and then it's sometimes harder to interact with other kids. So yeah, that was if you will, a bit of a challenge for him. And he didn't have that many friends and whatnot, just because he was so different from other kids and whatnot. But I think that changed when he went into high school, and the high school was where he really kind of also opened his communication potential, socializing with all the kids. And it was really a good fit because it was a very small school. The whole school was only 40 pupils, 10 per each grade.
So was it like a private school for like talented kids or something?
It was a very small private school, yeah. We looked at a bunch of schools, and then one school did not accept him. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating, because by that time it was already obvious that he's extremely smart. He won lots of math contests and physics and whatnot. He had all these awards and prizes. So we applied to a bunch of schools, and then he chose this small private school, and that was really important in his growth, I would say.
And can you tell more about Vitalik as a business person? So basically, he like, he's super smart. You told that it was as well difficult for him first to communicate with other kids, and then later he became more sociable. And currently, he runs one of the largest projects in the industry. So, like, what skills he developed for that?
I would never call him a business person, because he doesn't care about, quote unquote, what people call business. You know, money for him is not really a big deal. Ever since he started Ethereum, he's living as a nomad. You know, he travels the world, and pretty much all of his possessions are in this one big bag. He doesn't own a car. He doesn't want to drive a car and stuff like that. So really, he's not a business person as such, but he's an amazing leader, I would say, right? And he's an amazing leader. I would say what really helped him to create this very strong community that is Ethereum, I would say a number of things. I would mention he's a great communicator. There is that, you know, he's very clear when he speaks, and he defines things quite well, because again, a lot of people, they just talk about complex stuff without really understanding them. Then he's very sincere, and he in some ways, people, you can say naive. And you know, throughout the early years of Ethereum, there were some shrewd business people who then like, hey, let us help, and they kind of try to help, but they're really also keen to benefit themselves. And that was a bit of learning for him, to learn that, oh yeah, the world is not all people trying to be kind and good and help each other, but lots of people who have different motivations. So for him, learning that was a big deal. And overall, so yeah, those things I would mention.